Ransomware is a threat that can be as surprising as it is destructive. Just because you're using a cloud-based app doesn't mean that you're safe from ransomware. In this demonstration, you're going to see how Backupify for Google Apps can restore your business from even the worst ransomware attacks.
A couple of housekeeping items as we get into the actual demonstration here. I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record, but please do not try this at home. We are trained professionals. We're going to be doing a couple of different things here today. The first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about the environment that we're going to be deploying this to. What we've done is leverage both our Backupify product to do the main demonstration, but in the background I'm also using our Datto appliance to be able to spin off a virtual machine where I'm going to be infecting this environment with ransomware. In order to do this in a timely fashion, what I've done here and what you're seeing right now on my screen is logged into that VM. This is based on a snapshot from yesterday afternoon. Now the cool thing about this is that even though this is just a snapshot and it is virtualized, because all of the environments we're touching are actually connected to the internet, I'm going to be able to show you in real time, first off, what ransomware looks like, and second, what this restore will look like to a live and clean environment using the Backupify product. Now, we definitely urge any of our clients and any of our prospects to try out our solution and see the proof yourself. That said, we do not recommend that you go out and seek out ransomware for testing purposes. However, if you do want to test with ransomware, there is a repository on GitHub called the Zoo that contains many of the known variants of ransomware that have been made usable for testing purposes. We also recommend that if you find any new forms of ransomware, that you report them to the Zoo as well. What they're doing is building a repository of data to allow organizations like ours to be able to test and find new ways to help our customers and prospective customers hit by ransomware, and ultimately also organizations that provide firewall and antivirus services, ways to better detect and recover from these viruses. Plug done. Okay, let's get started with a quick overview of the plan. We're going to be infecting our environment with the Jigsaw ransomware. For those of you that don't know, Jigsaw is a form of cryptolocker that not only encrypts your files, it's also going to start to delete some of your data every hour if you do not pay the ransom. After 72 hours, all of your data is going to be deleted. So it's a major double threat, both locked out and deleted. This is a format that we've seen hit a number of our clients, and fortunately they've been able to recover with Backupify in place. Now I've gone ahead and downloaded the Jigsaw virus from that GitHub repo I mentioned earlier. I've unzipped it and changed the file type to an executable to make it usable for our testing purposes. Before we continue, I do want to talk a little bit about the Google Drive Sync client, as this is going to be an integral part of our presentation today. Without the Google Drive Sync client, it is somewhat difficult for ransomware to get into these cloud environments. However, it is still possible through external sources. There are variants of CryptoLocker today and ransomware that do traverse connections such as shared datasets that can actually affect Google Drive where a user has not installed the Drive Sync client. However, Google has been making a point to push this as a useful tool, especially for those organizations moving from traditional network shares to the cloud. So we are seeing more and more use of the Sync clients. Ultimately, though, the most common form of attack is going to be through that Drive Sync client, whether it's a OneDrive for Business Sync, a SharePoint network attached storage, or a Google Drive Sync client. Now, I've also gone ahead and seeded this environment with some data and have it synced locally with that Google Drive client, and I've been backing the account in question up with Backupify as well for just a few days. Now, if we dive in, you can actually see that there's a nice little folder structure that I've built here. I have all sorts of different file types that we've stored in the data set, different structures as well. And as you can see, there's definitely some very critical data, things like territory mappings and such. What I'm going to do at this point, though, is go ahead and I'm going to run that executable Jigsaw ransomware in the environment. And we're just going to let it run. As I mentioned earlier, I do not recommend anybody try this at home because we are intentionally infecting our environment. In fact, it's one of those things that if you're going to do testing, you should always firewall it and silo it behind a separate network. I do like the little pop-up that it provides where it talks about the software being registered. It's like it's ransomware, why would I need to register it? And I am going to keep two different interfaces open here just to show what happens to the data set in real time. If we pop over into my Google Drive, you can see that here, and I'm also going to keep the Drive client folder open here as well. It's going to take a minute or two, but what's going to happen now is that the ransomware virus is going to start propagating out, and we're going to start seeing some of the file names change as the data is affected within not only the hard drive of the system, but the Google Drive as well. And as you can see now, I'm actually getting these little .fun extensions, which is kind of ironic because obviously this is not fun to actually ever get. You'll also notice though that in my actual drive environment, all of the file types that you see changing on the local environment are changing as well. The Drive sync client does sync in real time, so we're seeing the virus replicate to the cloud environment in unison. This is actually another great example why these sync clients are never and should never be considered a backup solution, because really it's just replication. We're just going to give this another few seconds or so. We should see that infamous saw face pop up, and I definitely want to show you what that looks like for those of you that haven't been hit by ransomware. For those of you that have, I'm sure that you remember the screen all too well. Now, ultimately, ransomware is typically spread through an email. As a result, it's always recommended that you have in place a strong security awareness program and security training program. That helps to reduce the threat of ransomware. If you make sure that everybody knows if you receive an email, suspiciously, don't click on any links or open or download any files. That said, remain vigilant. Ransomware is becoming more sophisticated by the day. The deployment methods and the distribution methods constantly changing as well. So here we go. At this point, all of the files in the environment have been fully encrypted. We're just going to let this load because it's quite interesting what they actually say about how you're going to be able to get your data back. As you can read here, your computer files have been encrypted, your photos, videos, documents, etc. Don't worry, I have not deleted them yet. As I mentioned, Jigsaw is a particularly nasty version of CryptoLocker where it starts deleting your data as well, and by the end of the 72nd hour, all of your data will be deleted if you haven't paid the ransom. You have 24 hours to pay $150 US in Bitcoins to get the decryption key. Every hour's files will be deleted, increasing in amount every time. After 72 hours, all that are left will be deleted as well. If you don't have Bitcoins, it actually tells you how to find some so that you can pay them. The reason that they're using Bitcoins is because it is untraceable, so there's no way that they'll be identified. It's actually a very intelligent move by the hackers. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, it means that there's no easy way to catch these people. We're just going to let this finish loading. In fact, I actually can't do anything until it does finish. But we should be just about done here. Now, the other interesting thing about the Jigsaw virus is that if you try to restart your computer or if you try to delete or clean up your registry files and recreate them, that will actually trigger the Jigsaw system and it will jump ahead in 24-hour increments every time that you take an action like that. Ultimately, meaning that if I do it 3 times, all my data gets deleted because I've just pushed to that 72nd hour. This is a very intelligent ransomware as well that will continue to function even if you've gone ahead and do that. They kind of hide things in really interesting places. Again, this is also one of those times I'm actually going to shamelessly plug the second solution that we're using here, which is our Datto device, because this is a perfect example of where having Backupify is going to be hugely helpful. But ultimately, the Datto device is how we're going to be able to replicate the same results that we're going to see from the Backupify environment to the entire machine in a matter of just a few minutes. Now, as you can see here, this is fully loaded. If we dive into the drive environment, one of the things that you're going to notice is that some of the files have been encrypted and changed with that new format .fun. Google Drive docs will not represent that. However, if we were to try to log in and access one, it will actually show up infected. And what we're going to do first at this point is go in and actually delete the contents of the drive. Ultimately, it does us no good if we restore data back to a drive that's still infected. Hence why one of the most important things that you can do is remove the ransomware both from the Google Drive environment but also the live environment as quickly as possible. Now, there's 2 critical components to this. The first is that I want to delete that data, and second is that I want to purge my recycle bin. Once that's updated here in Google Drive, you'll be able to see that all of the encrypted and affected Drive documents have been completely cleared out, both on my local Drive sync client, but also in my online environment as well. Now, once I've deleted the Drive data, the next step is to recover the rest of the environment. And as I mentioned just a few moments ago, I've gone ahead and I'm going to be using our Datto appliance to do this. Now, what we're seeing here is actually a recovery of the original machine. If you jump back in, one of the things you'll notice is that even though this is a clean version of the same machine, there is still no data in my Google Drive client. Fortunately, with Backupify in place, this is not going to be the case for long. To get to Backupify, all I have to do is click the little app cube in the upper right corner, and then I'm just going to scroll all the way down at the bottom, click on the Backupify for Google Apps icon. Now, this is going to bring us to a login screen. I've already logged in, which is why it brings us directly through to the dashboard. And I'm going to start by using the search bar at the top to access the affected user. Now, the user's account that we're in, his name is Lawrence. So I'm going to start typing in Lawrence's name here in the search bar, and that's going to give me access to his account. So I'm going to select his name. Once I've done that, then I'm going to pull up his drive. Now, the cool thing and the nice thing about the way that we back up the data is this is all going to be item level based. We encrypt the data uniquely and restore the data uniquely based on the item level. So even if something like, let's say, a ransomware does get backed up, none of the prior versions that Backupify has captured, none of the points and times that we're going to be using to leverage for recovery are going to be affected by that, because not only do we have each item uniquely, every variation or every version of that is going to be stored independently as well. Now, I've been playing around with this for a few days, and I'm not sure if I got infected yesterday, so instead I'm going to jump back to the 22nd, back to when I know that that data was good. If need be, I also do have the capability with this tool to transition data, so if John Smith, one of Lawrence's coworkers, got hit a few days ago, maybe he owns Lawrence's data, I can always transfer that data to him. But for our purpose today, we will also just leave this at Lawrence and get his data back for him. Now, at this point, all I need to do is click the restore button, and that's going to effectively allow Backupify to start pushing the data directly back into the live Google Apps environment. And from a time perspective, I know that from previous experience, this restore is going to take about 20 minutes. I've tested this over several times over the past week, so that's typically what it takes. Now, while we're waiting for that to load, one of the big benefits that I do want to talk about is the fact that the way our solution works, it allows us to do multiple things besides just restore this data back very, very easily. It also allows us to maintain the original file formats. So one of the things that typically happens with Google is if I were to do an export of this data and then manually upload it, I would lose all of the Google formats because they are proprietary. With Backupify in place, though, if we back up a Google Doc, it stays as a Google Doc, both when we back it up, but also when we go to do the restore. And this is going to stand true for any document file format that you guys are putting into the Google Drive environment. So it does also support Microsoft Office equivalents, PDFs, JPEGs, what have you. Now, what we're seeing right now, this is all of the data that we're restoring. As you can see, there's a number of items that are being restored in that original format. Like I said, it normally takes about 20 minutes, and it is pretty cool to watch, but I promise I won't bore you and make you go watch all of that. But obviously, I did want to provide an overview of what this process looks like, how the product works, and how ultimately it can protect you and help recover from ransomware.